Welcome to another episode of Gallery Watch. I'm Lucy, and this week we're in Fremantle for Aboriginal artwork, Our Land, Our Stories. Let's take a look around. So Anna, congratulations on the exhibition. What do you hope to create here? What have you created?
Well, I think we've created a beautiful show, which I'm a little bit in love with actually, because it's what we like to do is make cultural connections, right? These artists are from a long way from Fremantle, so they're from the APY lands, which is the Pitjantjatjara, Yankunytjatjara language groups, which are in the northern South Australia desert and the West Australian desert as well. They're very important stories about the land and their ancestral stories, so it's the dream time that's been passed down for years and years and years. We titled the exhibition Nangapa Nura Nangapa Jukapa, which is a Pitjantjatjara words for our land, our stories. So really everything that you see on the wall here are cultural maps. They're cultural stories, and they're stories that have been explained to children as soon as they're born, as soon as they're old enough to understand. That's how they learn their country, and that's how they actually sort of know their tradition and get all the survival skills as well. And this has been happening for centuries. Some of the paintings here have got stories that have got sacred story to them. But
Which paintings are they? Do you want to show me?
Yeah, this one's Maureen Baker, and it's called My Father's Country, and it has actually got within it stories, travelling stories, and people travelling, but it's actually a man's story, and so she can only say that much about the painting. So she can actually paint it, and we can see this beautiful painting with sort of landscape, significant places or rock hole sites or waterhole sites, but the story we can't be told because it's a men's story.
Arthur, you helped put all these pictures together. How did it go, and how have you put this?
It was a long time, a long process, and I was quite anxious about some of these works because they are very important paintings by very important artists, and some major pieces of work, and so you have to be very careful about handling of these paintings and stretching them. So I think the preparation has probably taken us, months to put it together, and it's difficult to do that at the end and take some special skills, but the preparation over many months is.
Well, the climate's quite different. It's like quite stormy and tropical up north, so you'd have to be very careful, I assume, transporting the pieces. What kind of safety measures do you put in place?
The art centre, when they send the works and pack them, they're all, come very neatly and precisely contained. But as I said, there are some masterpieces amongst these works, and they're very valuable. And the artists obviously have done a lot of work, and so you have to respect what the artists have done, and hopefully we've endured their trust to be able to do that. Do
you think that, for want of a better explanation, Western feminism, like us as women here in Western Australia, do you think we have much of a strong understanding on our law as the Aboriginal women that you're sourcing some of these paintings from? Do you think their laws just as strong as ours, or do you think they're fighting for feminism as much as us women are still sometimes?
It's an interesting question. I remember when I worked in radio and I interviewed a Black American jazz singer who was a bit of an activist, and I asked her about feminist issues, and she just said, hey, our issue isn't feminism, our issue is being black. Feminism comes later. So in a sense, I think that, look, we, the Indigenous women have got very strong places in their community. It is a matriarchal sort of system as well, and there's very much defined areas and great respect given to women within their own traditional milieu, if you like. I mean, obviously with sort of Western influences, things have got a bit muddled, and so women, have issues. They do have similar issues than what we do, particularly but sort of different cultures. So I can't. I'm not really an expert to say definitively that the issues are the same.
Art industry for First Nations people is changing in Australia?
I think it's been affected by certainly some of the rules and regulations that have recently been brought in the last sort of 5 years. It's changed the nature of the art market, so it's been moderated slightly in terms of the commercial market. In terms of the non-commercial market, so work that, community work that's being done, I think that people are realising that there's an opportunity for economic sustainability in producing works of art like this. And so people are really kind of, communities are being quite strong about being independent and actually managing their own arts enterprises. And I think that's what shifted in the last 10, 15 years, is that, previously we had people who were managing centres, and now actually people from the communities are actually being trained to manage their own art centres or to develop their own art enterprises. So there's been a real shift in that. The work styles themselves have really changed, and I think that a lot of Indigenous artists are actually looking at other really unusual mediums. So a lot of obviously digital work is coming out now. That's what people are playing with. There's lots of social media stuff that's actually happening. And people are steering a little bit away from painting, although that happens in communities a lot because it's a very transportable resource. People are doing printmaking, people are doing sculptural works, lots and lots of installations happening around the country, and particularly large-scale public work. So I think that's a big shift as well.
Your favourite remote communities that create a lot of artwork in Western Australia?
My number one favourite, apart, obviously Nyungar's not remote, so I'm a Nyungar woman and Wadandi woman, and we have our art centres in regional areas, not in Perth, unfortunately, which is something I'd like to change. But aside from that, my number one favourite would be Yirrkala. So Yirrkala's very remote in the Northern Territory, northeastern Arnhem Land, and it's an extraordinary, it's been running for a very, very long time. It's an extraordinary community arts centre. It is basically run by and kind of sustained by community members, and they have access to their own, printing. They've had a printing...
like printing press type thing?
Yeah, but a whole area that's been running for the last 20 years that they've been producing prints from. They have everything from sculptural works to bark paintings to you name it. But they also then have a media sort of area which, they produce documentaries, they produce Yonu TV, they produce radio, they have everything. They have a stage up there. They literally have every sort of opportunity to practice arts of any kind, whether it's visual art or performing art. And that is something that's completely unique and unusual in Australia. So, and they're also just a really amazing community with beautiful people, really hard to get to. It's very remote, but extraordinary. It's certainly one of my favourite places to go, and one of their amazing artists won the Telstra Bark Painting Award this year, Nongaranga Marawili. So they really are doing some extraordinary things, very innovative things.
it's definitely a growing industry. Do you think that men or women tend to dominate the art industry, and has it changed since in the 20 years that you've been in art?
Look, it has changed, and I think one of the reasons that people thought it was really men that dominated the Indigenous art world is that really it was only men who were seeking men to paint and to talk about their work. In fact, women were doing work, but because it was such a male-dominated, white male-dominated sort of entry into those areas, they were the people that were out in communities. They were approaching men. They weren't approaching women. So that is kind of part and parcel of that. Women have always done this work, except that women have had very different stories and had very different ways of telling it, and that's what we're seeing now. There's also a lot of young women now that are actually very feisty and kind of telling stories in different ways. So I mentioned digital media before. The last winner of the Western Australian Indigenous Art Awards was a young woman called Megan Cope, who did a video about identity in Australia, Indigenous identity as it stands now. A really brave and challenging work about these kind of Aussie stereotypes, and that's what women are kind of being drawn to now, that they actually have a voice on many different platforms. So it's kind of changed in that sense. But there are some wonderful, particularly in the APY lands, there's some wonderful female painters.
Now it's time for a short break. We'll be back soon with more stories about Aboriginal Dreamtime. Welcome back to Gallery Watch. Let's go see some more paintings and talk to some more buyers. What brings you down here tonight?
Well, I've always really liked what Artesia present, because they bring not only the art but a really good understanding about where the art comes from. So I've always been impressed by the way this gallery presents the art. I came to one of their art parades a few years ago, and it just blew me away because it gave me an understanding about the art that I never really had, and now when I come I can see it in a very different light.
And how do you feel the galleries in Fremantle's coming along?
Well, it's always been, it's been a little bit of a struggle in the last couple of years, but with the loss of a couple of galleries, we have lost a few galleries in Fremantle. There is an underbelly of new artists and new creative industries coming through. So there's a really exciting vibe now. It might not be particularly obvious right now, but I can see it. I can see this energy coming through from the young creatives in Fremantle. So yeah, it just, like everything, it gets reborn, and we're going through that sort of renaissance stage right now.
And what's your favourite painting here tonight?
I actually like the one that's right behind us. I'm an architect, and I kind of prefer geometric kind of things, but I can see in this painting it almost feels like there's the traditional lands underneath with a layer of sort of Western sort of civilization kind of blended in over the top. It looks like there are fields and everything over the top of the billabongs and the like. So I'd love to hear what the real story is, but with a lot of Indigenous art, we kind of interpret it. And that's the point. That's what we should be doing. We should place our own stories into it as well as what their story is as well. So, yeah.
Your favourite paintings? Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, this painting to me looks really different, and I think for me it just appeals because it's got this circular part in the middle, which I think looks like resin, or it looks like a stained glass or whatever. So I chose it on the aesthetic because I thought it was just really beautiful. And then I found out that it is actually it's actually an area where a plant grows, which is the tobacco plant, and Rosalind Janyari, who is the artist, loves going there to get her tobacco. So, but also the plants that are in the area are also used for medicinal purposes as well. So it's it has a healing element to it as well. So it was just one that I thought was really beautiful. The Indigenous people have got different spatial awareness. It's from learning from birth over the centuries, their country, and they're told it, rather than we get a book and we look into the book and we find out where things are. This is actually told, and so it gets understood in a different way. So things are looked at in a vaster sort of region, I suppose, than what we would sort of think, oh yeah, this place is over there. So
It's like 5D or 3D rather than two-dimensional, isn't it, really?
yeah, absolutely. So you may have noticed that a lot of the paintings here are hung vertically, and that's simply because we didn't have the space to hang some horizontally. This one looks gorgeous horizontally as well. So, and we can do that. It's not as if it's something that you can't do. It's hung that way, but we quite often string them both ways so that the purchaser can put them, whichever, horizontal or vertical.
It's incredible because it reminds me of the original dot paintings that Geoffrey Barndon, an art teacher, who went to Papunya and started the whole system going, and the original from the original artist. This painting reminds me of that because it's such a clear statement from the artist of the night sky, and I think there's a part of it where there's just a drift through on that, on the left-hand side there, that is absolutely spectacular, I think. I've sailed a yacht through the Kimberleys at night with no lights on, looking at this perfect hemisphere, and this is what you see. You see it like this. Not in all the colours, but the colours are there, but not like that. It's a wonderful painting. The others, of course, this is how it has developed over the years, the Aboriginal art, and to the sculptures, and to the... I was in sculpture by the sea at Cottesloe this year, so I've sort of been very lucky to get in that, and for the first time. But coming here, it's opened my eyes. It's wonderful, these little sculptures around, and over there, the ones they've got some sort of pod open for their mouths, and just wonderful pieces of work, I think.
This little guy here has so much character. Is that like a seed pod?
Okay, that's Currajong seed pod. So it's actually, we can actually lift it. It's made from the queen palm, the sort of fronds from the queen palm tree. She uses like the little twigs for the feet, little gum nuts for the eyes, and their emu feathers. So he's called Mozart, the musician of the bush, and he's a kookaburra. And he has quite a lot of significance to Janine, apart from the fact that kookaburras are just very sort of jolly, they make you laugh. She was very, very close to her mother. A lot of the weaves, she weaves her mother's spirit into the weaves, and when her mother passed away, she was at Karrakatta at the cemetery, and she was very, very sad, and then a kookaburra came by and started laughing, and that really lifted her spirits. So it's quite important, but it's also got a fabulous humour about it.
He's got so much character. I don't know why I think it's a him, even though it's...
Well, he's Mozart, but interesting because Janine was finalist in the National Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander Art Awards in Darwin this year. She's a past winner, but and we had a Mozart as an entry, and Mozart sort of like found a new home within minutes of that exhibition opening, and he's had a few brothers since then. I think Janine is very clever because I'd suggested quite humorously for her to make a fascinator, so she made this one and she put the red and the yellow feathers together, which I think is really, really clever. She's got the Indigenous colours in there, and then she's put these little gum nuts on the side just to fasten the feathers onto it and to give it that nice finish. So they're very, very...
And gum nuts are obviously very unique to Australia.
Yeah, absolutely.
We went around to Anna and Arthur's gallery because my brother and sister-in-law were here and wanted to show them. They couldn't be here tonight. They've gone back to Canberra. And we saw that magnificent large one there and absolutely fell in love with it. But couldn't afford to pay quite that much or didn't have enough space. And there were two smaller ones. And we took them both home and tried them on our wall. And the one we bought has a bit more blue in it than this one.
But
and
this one up here
Was the matching one. Yeah.
That one suited the blue one suited our room better. And so this one's on display. And I'm really delighted that Anne and Charles have brought that one.
So you've got matching artwork. Whereabouts in the house are you going to put yours?
Oh, the second floor of a warehouse. Yeah. So it'll go
on the side of the staircase.
Yeah.
It's a Tiwi Island display that we also bought a beautiful painting from. So we have the whole room really of Indigenous art. So it'll just complete the whole series.
In fact, the other painting that sits there already is a matching one to one that Jude bought at the same time. So when I arrived here tonight, I asked what she thought of things. She said, I've bought a painting very like that one up there, and Anwen and I were already looking at it, so I thought we should get that too. And I think it's a wonderful piece. I mean, it's very like the early Papunya paintings rather than the later kinds of ones, and I think just fantastic art quality and wonderful story.
It leaves a lot to the imagination too.
Yeah.
You know, you can see the ocean, the mapping of the oceans and the earth
And the sky.
It's got that earth colour too of the Pilbara and the Kimberley in it. It's just...
Somebody said it's like if you took a helicopter over some of the scrublands in the Kimberley. It's almost like that as well, but it's also like lying on your back and looking up at the Milky Way in the countryside where there's no distractions from other light. It's just wonderful. You know, it's like falling into space. It's absolutely wonderful. Yeah.
Very thrilling. Very thrilling.
Do you remember much from your times in Geraldton teaching art? What were the students like, and was there a lot of connection to the land that the students were on?
With the sea, yes, with the sea particularly, because we lived right on the coast. So my art particularly, my paintings are all, I do aerial landscapes. And these landscapes, a lot of them were concerned with the Aborigines Islands. So we went to the Aborigines, we sailed yachts and went to the Aborigines and had a wonderful time and mapped the landscape. So this is what all this is about. This is all these paintings here are actually maps of the landscape.
So you almost need to be a geography teacher instead of an art teacher.
No. No, but that's one of the reasons I can appreciate a lot of this, I think, because it's not like my painting at all. Although I do a sort of dot painting, but my sort of dots are related to French Impressionist paintings, which I love.
All we've got time for on tonight's episode of Gallery Watch. I'm Lucy, and thank you for watching Our Land, Our Stories, and we'll see you all next week for another fabulous exhibition.